What is the importance of such conferences to countries like Brazil and Africa? What's the significance of such conferences?
Well, for us, it's an opportunity to get in direct contact with not only government representatives, but also business people and financial institutions from the region. Because we have only very recently started working directly in Africa. So for us, it's a big opportunity to interact on a one-to-one basis and to learn more about what are the specific needs of these businesses, of these countries, so that we can better evaluate how we can contribute and what kind of partnership we can strike with them.
Well, when you come into these partnerships, because there's a lot, Africa is mostly agricultural based,
yeah,
and minerals. So when you're choosing a sector to get involved in, what are you looking at?
Well, I would have to say that I agree entirely with you. Those are the two very important sectors, but there's also a major need in Africa for infrastructure. And Brazil has become, because of our own history, of our own recent economic development, Brazil has become a very important provider of engineering services for infrastructure. For instance, our knowledge of the technical issues involved with hydroelectrical power plants and dams is one that is well known worldwide. So basically, what we try to find out is where the experience that the Brazilians have acquired over the years as a developing country in facing up to our own challenges in developing our industry, developing agriculture, where is this experience relevant to potential African partners? That's what we try to find out, because we have a mandate from our government that is very specific. We are to encourage Brazilian presence in Africa only when it is clear to us that this presence is welcome on the part and is in accordance with the priorities of the country, the host country. So we, as a public organism, as a public bank, we have to be very mindful of the local authorities, the local government priorities, and that's what we try to set up.
Oh, okay. And then in terms of corruption, because corruption is a big issue in Africa,
sure,
and partnering with people, is that why you're choosing to go more private sector than to go government?
I wouldn't say so. We talk a lot to governments, but we have as a public enterprise in Brazil as well. We have existed for over 60 years. We have maintained a standard of governance that allows us to get the message very, very clearly through that all of our dealings must be 100% transparent and accountable. If for no other reason, because we have to answer for every single transaction that we made to a number of different oversight bodies and agencies in Brazil. So we, to be honest with you, we as BNDES, as a public Brazilian bank, we have not been confronted with a problem in our dealings with African governments, with African agencies or businesses of that nature, even though we know that it exists. But I think that for the very nature of our institution, probably this doesn't come up, it doesn't get brought to the table.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is you're out to teach them how to fish, not giving them the fish.
Absolutely. We're out to do two basic things. One of them is technical cooperation. We have a history of many challenges that go from family agriculture to building aircraft, that go from developing biofuels that work, that are commercially viable, to building large infrastructure for energy, for hydropower energy. And we know that a good part of that experience is relevant to African countries because of the same physical conditions, the same climate, and the same stage of development. So the first thing we're out to do is to find the people who are interested, the countries and the organizations that are interested in our expertise, and then have technical cooperation. And the second mandate we have is that of an ECA. We are an export credit agency, and we try to show various potential investors and buyers in Africa where Brazilian services, Brazilian brands and Brazilian products would be relevant. Typically, as I mentioned before, in infrastructure engineering has been one of the most successful cases.
All right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for this.
Oh no, sorry.
Whoops.
One more thing.
No problem.
Everybody seems to think that this is the century for Africa in terms of development, in terms of they've got a bigger middle class now, they've got more education, and so they've got all this potential to grow. Do you think that it is the time?
I can tell you one thing. I come from a country that has been for decades dubbed the country of the future. It gets old. So it's important to put in place the concrete structures that are needed for real development to be achieved. Basically, you cannot develop a country without infrastructure. You need water and sewage. You need transportation. You need energy, more than everything else, and you need telecommunications. So infrastructure, not to mention ports and harbors and airports, but this is key, and this is something that has to be in place, is where productivity comes from. And the second structural need for development is the people. You have to have social inclusion. Brazil has done a great effort. We still have to do a lot more. But we have brought people who are above the poverty line. We had under the poverty line, we had around 37% of the population 10 years ago. Now it's around 8% of the population. It's still a lot. But unless you do that, you do not generate the social and economic conditions for development. Now we have an internal market, people who are able to take part in a market economy as consumers. So people can talk a lot about competitivity and productivity and all sorts of technical indicators, but those two structural items, if they are absent, the future will be always, one step ahead of you, and it will be always tomorrow. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.